We're going live today with Dr. Amy Horniman. Happy Wednesday. Hope everyone is good. I'm so excited to have Dr. Amy here today. We're going to talk about women's health again, about hormones. We're talking about perimenopause, transition time, which could last up to even 10 years or sometimes more before menopause. Hi. If you hear me, could you just wave and show that the connection is fine? Just want to make sure before inviting Dr. Amy here. Hope you all hear me well. So we're going to talk about, great, thanks. Thanks, Shar. So we're talking about hormones. If you have any questions about women's health, about hormones, do not hesitate to drop it either in the comment box or the question bubble. Hi, good to see you all. So I'm going to invite Dr. Amy now. She is an expert, a thyroid expert. So any question about thyroid during perimenopause or anytime, definitely drop it here and we can ask her to help us with those questions. Okay. I'm going to invite Dr. Amy now. Thyroid disease specialist. Oh, hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. Thanks.
It is so good to see you.
Have you here.
I love your content. I love everything that you're doing. So I'm so excited to talk to your audience.
It's great to have you here. I remember I met you in London a few months ago.
I know. That was a great show. That was fantastic. It was so nice to see you.
Yes. So good to have you here today. So if you don't mind to introduce yourself to everyone, all the viewers, and then we can dive into all the questions.
Absolutely. Let's do it. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Amy Horniman, aka the Thyroid Fixer. And I fix thyroids and hormones. I mean, there's so many women out there. Really, if you're over the age of 40, you have dysregulated hormones, you're probably in perimenopause, and you most likely have a thyroid problem as well. So we're here to dive into all of your questions and talk about that today, just unpack it all.
Great. Amazing. So let's talk about perimenopause. So we see so many hormonal shifts and changes, imbalances with estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and of course thyroid, cortisol, insulin, everything, all imbalances. So let's just touch base on that, and then we can more focus on thyroid.
Yeah, absolutely. So really, perimenopause can start at any time in a woman's life. I mean, we normally think about it in a woman's 40s, maybe going into 50s, but usually by the time she hits 50, her hormones have fluctuated so much that she's most likely in full-blown menopause or stepping up to it very, very shortly. But in perimenopause, I mean, we now know that it can actually start in a woman's 30s, early 40s, and this is where progesterone takes the first nosedive off a cliff. I mean, that's really the first hormone to go in many of us. And we even see this in a woman's 20s with things like heavy menstrual cycles, PCOS. So we'll see that low progesterone level very early
Fertility
in fertility. Yep, yeah, the fertility issues, absolutely. And progesterone is such a beautiful hormone. It's a calming hormone. It helps regulate our cycles. It helps calm our brain, helps with anxiety, helps with depression. And then as we use HRT, BHRT, and specifically progesterone in a woman's 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, now it's providing help with hot flashes, protection of our bones. I mean, it just does so much. This hormone is just a beautiful hormone. I love all the hormones, but progesterone, since we're talking about that's the first one to take a nosedive, that's the first one that we usually start replacing very early in perimenopause. And then that's usually followed by testosterone. And testosterone, I call it the GSD hormone, the get stuff done hormone. And that helps us, it gives us that motivation and drive. So not just at the gym, we always think of testosterone as like the big beefy guys are throwing around the heavy weights, but even for us as women, number one, we need to protect our muscle. We need to lift heavy. Yeah, we need that motivation at the gym, but I'm even talking about motivation anywhere. Motivation to just get stuff done during the day, do the multitasking chores that we women take on, to run a business, to run your family. That takes that drive and motivation, and that is testosterone. Now, testosterone is also tied to heart health. Yes, it's tied to libido. It's even tied to hair. So too much testosterone, we can lose hair. Not enough testosterone, we can lose hair. So testosterone is vital, and that can really tank at any age, but normally we do see it more in that perimenopausal state. And then followed by estrogen. And that's really where we start to move into menopause, and our estradiol levels, or all of our estrogen levels, take a nosedive. And that's when we start replacing estradiol. Now, after the age of 40, when we enter perimenopause, we enter something called thyropause. And this is where those fluctuating hormones that we just talked about, those fluctuations in our hormones is enough to turn on the Hashimoto's switch. So when I'm talking about Hashimoto's, I'm talking about low and slow thyroid function. And this is where your body, your immune system, is attacking your thyroid because it thinks it's a bad guy. It just thinks it's a bad guy. And we know that what triggers Hashimoto's really stems from hormonal fluctuation. Now, it can be stress, it can be toxin exposure, it can be, a big move, a death, divorce, something like that. But oftentimes we'll see thyroid problems come up and start expressing themselves as women after pregnancy, big hormonal change, and in perimenopause and menopause, big hormonal changes. So that's why we call it thyropause. And this is where the thyroid gland really needs a lot of love. We need to test, not guess. We might need to treat and bring in thyroid hormone replacement, because otherwise you'll just be left with all of the symptoms of low thyroid function, and you won't live a happy life. And we want you going through menopause and menopause like a rock star, like the badass woman that you're meant to be. So that's why it's important to address thyroid and all the other hormones in perimenopause.
True.
Yeah.
We see so many people complaining about fatigue, tiredness, weight gain, sleep problems. And I think all of these hormones are linked and overlap. These symptoms could be related to any or all of these imbalances: thyroid, cortisol, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So so you see this woman who's perimenopause and coming with all these symptoms, weight gain, what tests you normally suggest? I know as a conventional, I used to practice, or I still practice conventionally too, as a family doctor. So we do a lot of the time TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, for thyroid test. But generally speaking, what are the tests you normally like to see in a woman perimenopause with all those symptoms?
So I like to do the full gamut of tests. So for the hormones, I like looking at total estrogen, and then we break it down into estradiol, estrone, estriol. Love progesterone, then free and total testosterone. I really like to look at sex hormone binding globulin, so that's going to be SHBG, because that tells us if some of your hormones are actually bound up and not able to get to the cell receptor sites where they need to get to do their job. I also like to look at DHT, which is dihydrotestosterone, because before I start a woman on testosterone replacement, we want to know, is she going to push down that 5-alpha reductase pathway over to DHT, where she might start losing hair, break out, get some like facial hair. So we want to test that just to look at your propensity. And then we get into the thyroid. So TSH, yes. Free T4, absolutely. But then we have to look at free T3, reverse T3, and then TPO and TG antibodies. That tells us if you have Hashimoto's or not. So we really do that full panel in addition to, of course, all the others like insulin, A1C, D, B, all of that. We want to look at your full health, all of you, every little aspect of you that we can see, we want to test. But for thyroid and hormones, it would be all of those tests.
Great. And generally, what, again, very common question that comes up is about timing of the test. Does it matter when they have the test? Is there a part of a day of the cycle if they're still cycling, or does it matter anytime they can go?
Yeah, if you're just testing thyroid, it's not important as to when you go in the month. It's more important that you withhold your thyroid medication for 18 to 24 hours before you go for that test. Now, I know a lot of people out there will say, well, but my doctor told me to take my medication in the morning and go. Now, this really only applies to those of you who are taking T3 in the form of liothyronine, Cytomel, or you're taking maybe a compounded T3, T4, or natural desiccated thyroid, which is over here in the States, it's Armour and NP. I'm not sure what version you guys have in the UK, but, or anywhere else in the world, wherever you're listening, but anything with T3 in it, you want to withhold it for 18 to 24 hours because we don't want the labs picking up on the medication that's literally in your bloodstream. We want to know, where are you at baseline where there's no medication in your bloodstream? This is literally where you are. Now, you don't want to go longer than 24 hours because then your T3 starts to decline and we don't get an accurate picture. But 18 to 24 hours is that sweet spot. And then for a cycling woman, you do want to go day 19 to 22 of your cycle, 19 to 21, 19 to 22, because we want to look at your estradiol and your progesterone on those days. Now, it's not important that you get testosterone, all of that, all the labs taken on day 19 to 22, but if you are a cycling woman, I want you to hit it in that window. And if you're menopausal and you're not cycling anymore, you've had a hysterectomy and ablation, then it doesn't matter. Then you just go.
Mm-hmm. So around day 19 to 21, 5 to 7 days after ovulation to get the see progesterone picture too. That's the highest levels of progesterone around that time. That's great. And so very commonly, a common question I have with my patients and I see in perimenopause women is about weight gain. So this is very, very common, this problem that they say, just like waking up day morning and we gain so much weight, fat around the waist, around the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you look sideways at a brownie and you gain weight. Exactly.
And it is sometimes quite resistance to treatment. So what, again, how you approach these women and what's your recommendation or how you treat this problem, the issue of metabolic dysfunction or this all these obesity and fat?
So when we're looking at metabolism, the big players in the game of fat loss going to be thyroid function. Specifically with thyroid function is free T3 and reverse T3. Those are those two markers that I love to look at. They really tell us a boatload about what's going on with you. And what the free T3 is telling us is how much active thyroid hormone do you have in your body. So the active thyroid hormone T3 is what gets to your cell and attaches to the cell receptor site and turns it on. So that's what's literally turning on your metabolism. Then we look at reverse T3, which is the anti-thyroid hormone. And why this is important is because many of you listening, if you went through the normal conventional system with a thyroid problem, you've been put on T4 only. Levo, Synthroid, Euthyrox, or even a boatload of NDT. I mean, even if you're on gosh, I've even seen reverse T3 go up with people on 30 milligrams of Armour. So any kind of NDT medication, we want to check that reverse T3 because that's telling us how well you're converting the inactive form T4 of thyroid hormone, the inactive thyroid hormone, over to the active thyroid hormone. Now, reverse T3 is pretty universal. So I'll throw this number out for you guys. So when you're listening, you can grab your labs, you can look at your labs, you can be like, oh my gosh, this is what Dr. Amy's talking about. Reverse T3 should be below at 12. I don't care what that reference range is. I don't care that it goes up to a 25 or that you weren't actually flagged high with a little H. I want it below a 12, because if it's above a 12, then you are either on way too much T4. And by the way, T4 only doesn't work. 98% of us with hypothyroidism need T4 and T3 or T3 only. So if you're on T4, it doesn't work. So you want to know how much of that T4 is being properly converted to T3, or is it being converted to reverse T3? Now, reverse T3 will shut your body down. It'll shut down your metabolism. You will not be able to burn fat. You'll have low energy. And of course, that contributes to, when you are so darn tired, you don't even want to go to the gym or walk or work out or do any kind of activity. So we really want to know what that reverse T3 is. The other part of metabolism, insulin. Insulin and insulin resistance, which I see insulin resistance in easily 95% of my patients. I'm not sure about you, but I see it all the time. It's crazy. It's rampant, with or without thyroid disease. I mean, with a thyroid dysfunction, oh my gosh, absolutely, there's insulin resistance, because the thyroid controls your insulin response, controls your blood glucose regulation. So when the thyroid is off, I don't care if you're eating a carnivore diet. Your glucose will most likely be high. You'll get a high A1C. We'll test that fasting insulin. That will be above a 6, which we want that below a 6. That'll be above a 6, and you will be insulin resistant. And when you're insulin resistant, the fat cells just grow. I mean, for lack of a better description, you can't lose fat no matter what you do because of that insulin resistance. The third part of the metabolism equation is testosterone. And this comes back to that motivation, that drive, yes, to move, to get things done. But testosterone also plays a role in our metabolism. And we also know that the more muscle that we have and the muscle that we protect on our body, the more metabolically active we will be overall. So I would say, honestly, in that order. And then we start moving down the pipe and we go, okay, well, when a woman enters menopause and that FSH goes up and estradiol goes down, then she starts to gain weight in the midsection. We see that widening effect happen. So there's so many different hormones in play, but I would say that those are the top players in the metabolism game.
Thyroid, insulin, and testosterone. It's interesting you talk about reverse T3 and free T3. So we see very commonly doctors push T4 or thyroid medication, and the T4 is back to normal. Still, woman has the same symptoms, feeling tired, because they haven't addressed the other hormones. So that's very important point. And what about, someone was asking about thyroid and menopause. If thyroid is dysfunctional, could be cause of early menopause and premature menopause.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Because when you think about the thyroid being the master gland, like kind of put it at the top of the list, and then everything below it, all the other hormones in our body are kind of really controlled by the thyroid. So if the thyroid is off, the other hormones are going to be off as well. And that's where we see that insulin dysregulation. We might see cortisol high or low. And then cortisol has a direct effect on thyroid and pushes up reverse T3. So there's a back and forth relationship between thyroid and cortisol. And then we have the sex hormones as well. So when we have all of the downstream sex hormones, progesterone, estradiol, testosterone, and thyroid is off, yes, absolutely. We can see those abnormal levels. Like, okay, wait, you're 35 years old and you have the estradiol of a 70-year-old not on hormones. Like it doesn't. So that is absolutely where we will see early menopause.
Someone is asking about Hashimoto's, and if someone has autoimmune disease, which is very common in women, does that mean that she will end up with hypothyroidism or thyroid disease, or is it just those abnormal antibodies staying up? So
if you have antibodies in the TPO and TGA category, so thyroid peroxidase or thyroglobulin, any antibody, and again, I don't even care if you're flagged high, if it's red, any antibody in those two tests means that you have Hashimoto's. So you have the autoimmune form of hypothyroidism, low and slow thyroid function. Now, let me break this down. So what will happen oftentimes is that a woman will be tested. She'll find, okay, you have Hashimoto's, but the doctor will say, we're going to watch and wait. We're just going to keep an eye on them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem I have with that is those antibodies, I want you to think of them as soldiers. And they are going out and they're beating up your thyroid. They're waging a war on your thyroid.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I beat you up every day, I always use this analogy. If I beat you up every day, you probably wouldn't do your job very well. And as your thyroid gland is getting beaten up, and when we look at it on an ultrasound, it's really teeny tiny and jagged, and it looks like it's been through a war. It literally does. So when we have those antibodies and our thyroid gland is getting beaten up, it really can't produce the thyroid hormones that it needs to produce. And it can't really convert that inactive T4 over to active T3. So my argument to conventional medicine that says that to women
Mm-hmm.
is, okay, are we going to wait until she gains another 20 pounds and literally can't drag herself off the couch? Like, it's no quality of life whatsoever. But oh my gosh, her thyroid antibodies are finally flagged high, so we can give her that diagnosis of Hashimoto's. When you have Hashimoto's, we need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we catch it really, really early, we can use things like black cumin seed oil, low dose naltrexone to suppress those antibodies and maybe even push you into a remission state where, as long as you're symptom free, that's fine. We'll keep you right there. But if you come in and you have antibodies and you're gaining weight and you can't lose and you're tired and your hair is falling out and you're constipated and you're moody and depressed and anxious and you're not sleeping and all the things, then the last thing I want to do is be like, well, Susie, we're just going to watch and wait on your antibodies and we'll retest them. Like, no, let's do something now. Let's get you feeling good. Because at the end of the day, no matter what the tests say, no matter what any kind of lab says or doctor says to you, it's how you feel. How do you feel? And if you tell me that you have all these symptoms, that's not normal. Our bodies were not made that way. Our bodies were not made to have boatloads of symptoms, to be gaining weight, to be tired, to be losing our hair, to be anxious and depressed all the time, and then not sleeping and needing to take caffeine to wake up and pills to go to sleep. That's not normal. And if your body has any of those symptoms, that's your body saying, hey, there's something going on. You need to look into it. You need to fix this thing so that you can have your life back.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So we just not treat numbers, but symptoms are important, very important. And so you mentioned a little bit about lifestyle. I think it's important: lifestyle, sleep, mindset, stress, and nutrition. So if someone comes with all these symptoms and we've diagnosed with Hashimoto's, what are the lifestyle advices we can provide with regard to nutrition, sleep, and stress, all those things?
Okay. So let's start with nutrition. I always say that your labs tell us how you should eat. So if you do have hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, it's not quite being optimized yet, then we look and see, oh my goodness, you have insulin resistance. There's that insulin is high. Maybe your A1C is high. You're wearing a CGM. And you're like, why am I getting these readings of 160, 180 all the time? That comes back to your thyroid, but it also tells us you need to pull back on the carbohydrates. Because when we're looking at insulin and A1C, that's and glucose, but glucose can sometimes lie. So I really like to look at A1C and insulin. That tells us, hey, you're insulin resistant. And what do we know drives insulin high? What do we know drives blood glucose high? Stress and processed foods, carbohydrates, sugars. So first we start with the diet. And it's funny, I just had a patient yesterday. She got new labs done. I'm going over her labs. And I see an A1C of a 5.8. And I'm like, what's happening? And it shot up. It was a 5.4. Now it's 5.8. And I said, okay, you are either stressed out of your mind, not sleeping, or you're eating like crap. And she says, it's a little bit of all of the above. I'm eating like crap because my mom has Alzheimer's. I'm taking care of her. I'm on a flight right now to go to her. And I'm really not sleeping that well. And I'm like, well, that's the trifecta right there.
Yes.
So literally her body is becoming diabetic through, and I mean, when she said about her eating, she sent me what she ate. When she says she was eating kind of crappy, I'm talking about fruit, dried fruit, a grain-free bagel, and an RX bar. I mean, it wasn't horrible. It's not like she was eating fast food and donuts, but it was enough combined with her stress level and lack of sleep to really throw her insulin off. So yes, she does have to basically become keto carnivore for a little bit to take that inflammation down, to take down her insulin, to better regulate her glucose. So her labs are telling us what she needs to do. Her labs are telling us she needs to change her diet. Her labs are telling us that she needs to control her stress as much as she possibly can. She doesn't have total control over that situation. A lot of us are in stressful situations that we can't control. So for her, deep breathing, meditation, anything to bring her back into that parasympathetic state, which we know lowers cortisol, that's going to be really beneficial because that high cortisol is pushing up her glucose, which is pushing up her insulin. So it really probably is stemming from the stress, but that's creating a cascade in her body. So she needs to sleep more. I told her, hey, if we have to add in a supplement to sleep, let's do it. Who cares? Let's get you sleeping. Sleeping is more important than anything for regulating your body, for repairing your body, for controlling glucose. So I would say, number one, look at your insulin, look at your A1C, adjust your food as necessary. Get control of your stress no matter what you can do. The meditation, deep breathing. I mean, there's so many apps now and little devices. Like I have this little device on my desk and it sits on your chest and vibrates, and it really brings you into that parasympathetic nervous system state. Hot yoga, all of those things that really take that stress down, we need to implement, and we need to be sleeping.
Yes. So mentioned about some supplements to help with sleep. What normally you recommend or you use in the patients?
Well, I mean, definitely progesterone, which is not a supplement. It's a prescription medication hormone. But if women are low in progesterone, then let's get that progesterone in because that helps with sleep big time, big time. And then love magnesium. I love inositol, especially for perimenopausal and menopausal women. That really helps with brain function as well as sleep. GABA is the calming neurotransmitter. So that's fantastic. I do love melatonin as well. A lot of people can't tolerate melatonin. It gives them vivid dreams or makes them too groggy. But even like small doses, like 0.5 to 1 milligram of melatonin, I think is great. So there's a variety of different things we can do for sleep to kind of stack it and to get you sleeping deeper. It's just a matter of finding what's going to work for you.
Someone is talking about gluten-free and dairy-free, and that apparently helped a lot with their symptoms.
Yes. Okay. I'm glad they brought that up. So gluten-free is a must. If you have Hashimoto's or really any autoimmune condition. So kind of going back, and I apologize, I didn't fully answer that last question about autoimmune. If you have Hashimoto antibodies, you have Hashimoto's.
Yeah.
If you have other autoimmune conditions, like let's say you're like, oh, well, I was diagnosed with celiac or Crohn's disease. Yes, autoimmune begets autoimmune. Where we see one, we normally see more than one. So it would be advised to check your Hashimoto antibodies if you have another autoimmune condition. But with any autoimmune condition, Hashimoto, celiac, Crohn's, rheumatoid arthritis, whatever, you gotta be gluten-free. You have to be gluten-free. We know that gluten, specifically with Hashimoto's, because it actually looks like the thyroid gland as a molecule, it's called molecular mimicry. So we know with Hashimoto's, those soldiers, you eat gluten, they're going out and attacking. They are attacking your thyroid gland over and over and over again. Then they're going to grow their army. So every time you eat gluten, you're growing that army of soldiers that's going out and attacking. And the same thing, I mean, really for other autoimmune conditions, we see big autoimmune flares with gluten. Dairy is iffy, very kind of personalized. I see somebody said fermented dairy. I don't tell my patients to eliminate dairy unless they are an autoimmune ball of fire, because we know how hard that is. Like even me personally, getting my protein in, I really like fermented, like a good quality organic fermented grass-fed Greek yogurt. I love grass-fed cheese. If you're sprinkling on your salad or something, I don't want to deprive somebody of dairy if we don't have to. And fermented dairy is fantastic. Where I will pull dairy is if someone is that autoimmune ball of fire, and it's just for a short period of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That sense. Someone is asking about, or a lot of people have this question about, especially during perimenopause and having on board all these hormone imbalances, what about the exercise, physical activity? We hear a lot about high and quite heavy lifting. So is that for everyone? How do you feel about that? And normally, generally, how do you advise your patients about exercise, fitness?
Yeah, so I am a huge fan of lifting heavy. So even tying in the nutrition aspect, I forgot to mention that protein is key.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be getting in 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. So what that means is, let's say you are fighting weight and you're gaining weight and you really wish you were 20 pounds lighter. Then take your weight minus those 20 pounds, because that's where your realistic
Mm-hmm.
lean body weight is, your ideal body weight. And then that's how many grams of protein you should be getting in. So we want to start with protein first, with nutrition. Protein feeds our muscles. And then we want to move into lifting heavy with that protein on board, because when we lift, we deplete our glycogen stores. We basically break down the muscle, and then we need those amino acids to come in and replenish. Now, yes, you can take an amino acid supplement, but really the best form is through food. Now, I still take an amino acid supplement through the day, and I eat my protein grams in food, in real food. But you have to get that protein in, protect the muscle, then lift heavy. And women, still to this day and age, they're still scared about getting big and bulky from lifting. And it's not going to happen, ladies. It's not, I promise you. I came from the bodybuilding and fitness world. And I saw women who got big and bulky, that basically were walking that fine line of looking like a man on stage.
Yeah.
And I promise you, they're on such high amounts of steroids. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking testosterone replacement like we use for perimenopause and menopause. I'm talking large amounts of anabolic steroids, things that dudes will take. And that's why they are literally shifting their body. They're becoming large. Yes,
Yeah.
that stimulus of lifting is triggering their muscle to grow on top of the drugs that are in their system. You will not get big and bulky, I promise you. So lifting heavy protects our muscle. Our muscle is our longevity organ. It protects our bones. It protects against bone breakage. The biggest cause of mortality in the older population is breaking a bone,
Frailty.
because once you do, especially a hip,
Mhm.
because once you do, there's usually no coming back. Your death rate increases by 50% if you fall and break a hip. What does muscle do? Protects our skeletal system. It protects our bones. So yeah, you might fall and be like, oh, damn, that really hurt. But you didn't just break a hip. You're
Yeah.
not that fragile. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of lifting heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I really try to get people off of the treadmill and elliptical. I think some cardio is fine. Those quick bursts like the Carol bike or HIIT training, if you got to get your cardio in. But if you think you're going to burn fat walking on a treadmill or doing a spin bike for an hour, you're going at it the wrong way. And I know I've been there, done that. I used to do 2-a-days for cardio, twice a day, because I thought that would burn my body fat. That's what my coach told me to do when I was training. And now I do zero cardio unless I jump on my Carol bike, or I'm just lifting heavy. Like if I'm doing a squatting session, my heart rate is going to be in the cardiovascular zone. It's going to be orange and red, because I'm just lifting heavy and I'm exerting myself. So yeah, if you want to get the cardio in, get the cardio in that way. Please don't be a cardio queen.
Someone is talking about she added protein into her diet, but she gained weight. I definitely tell her to go and do some other test, make sure there's nothing else. Probably there must be something imbalance. I don't put it down to taking protein to gain weight and increase blood sugar, the right protein especially.
Yeah,
What
yeah. I mean, the only time I've ever seen protein increase blood glucose is when someone's taking like 200, 250 grams a day and she's a tiny woman. And that might just be like over that protein limit to where that gluconeogenesis kicks in and protein can turn into sugar. But it really does take, I mean, it takes excessive protein intake for that to happen.
Mhm. Someone is talking about uh, going fast now. Wake up at night, the fast heartbeat, TPO at 90, and she's 70-year-old and no medication. So what is it going on here?
So I get patients in their 70s and 80s all the time, and we do get them on the proper thyroid hormone replacement because why not? I mean, you still deserve to have a kick-ass life, so let's do it. Yes, a TPO of a 90 means Hashimoto's. It just, I mean, it's just black and white. It means Hashimoto's. So then you want to really look at the other tests. You want to demand that you get a free T3 and reverse T3 and see what those are as well, because even if that reverse T3 is high, that's telling us that your own body, I know you're not medicated, your own body is not converting properly. And then the other thing I would recommend to do is to add in black cumin seed oil. So I put it in my Hashimoto's fixer. So I have a whole fixer supplement line. My Hashimoto's fixer is black cumin seed oil. And I have a whole podcast on the benefits of black cumin seed on the Thyroid Fixer podcast, because it's amazing. I mean, when you start looking at what black cumin seed does, it takes down inflammation, it helps with weight loss, it helps with hair, and yes, it reduces your antibodies. I mean, we've had some people reduce their antibodies by 200 points just using black cumin seed oil.
Yeah, it does. Someone was asking about ashwagandha, which is an adaptogenic herb. It does help with so much lowering stress and cortisol, but I know there's some studies, or maybe one or two, about not to take it, people who have Hashimoto's or thyroid disease. I mean, I personally have advised and prescribed it to people with thyroid disease. I don't know. I mean, there hasn't been any issues. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's really split. Yeah, it is. It's
Yes.
split. I'll have some people come in. They're like, if I go off my ashwagandha, everything goes to crap. I feel horrible. I'm like, well, then stay on it. Like, if it's working for you, then keep doing it. But it might not be something that I would start with, especially if we test someone's cortisol and then we actually get that full picture of throughout the day, the saliva cortisol test.
Yes.
And that allows us to better tailor it. So, you know, if a woman's really high cortisol at night, I like phosphatidylserine a little bit better. So it just depends on the person. And if you're taking ashwagandha and you notice a big difference, then keep taking it.
Yes. Yes. So any other supplements you recommend to people who have Hashimoto's?
Yeah.
Or autoimmune disease?
Absolutely. So I call these my no duh supplements. So these are meaning like duh, of course you're going to take these, right? Every day. These are the non-negotiables.
Oh.
So you got your magnesium, and I really prefer multiple mags, because a lot of times people will go out and they'll buy a mag citrate. I'm like, well, that's great to help you poop, but that's not going to help with your sleep and your mood and your muscles and relaxation and all that. So I love a multi-mag. And then vitamin D, of course, we need to keep our levels up with vitamin D, especially with Hashimoto's, because your immune system is what's confused. And vitamin D balances the immune system and has vitamin D is a hormone. So it has a huge role in balancing out your hormones as well. I love iodine as well. I know this is very controversial in our world, but I am a huge fan of small amounts of iodine, and then we work our way up. We make sure that you tolerate it. We don't send you into a thyroid storm. It's all about doing it correctly. Iodine really got a bad reputation, I think, because too many practitioners were using high doses and sending people into a hyper state. So that liver, I just saw that come across. Yes, supporting your liver, checking your liver enzymes, giving your liver some love can never hurt. Even a good liver support. Like I have my liver fixer. I take that usually 1 week on, 1 week off, or 1 month on, 1 month off, just so I have that ongoing liver support. And then, well, what you heard me talk about in London is T2. And T2 is a thyroid hormone that I've been studying for 15 years now. It actually has over 30 years of research, and it is a thyroid hormone, but it doesn't come back and shut down your own thyroid function. And why this is important is because if you were to say, okay, you know, Dr. Amy, I'm gaining weight, I can't lose weight, I'm really tired. I'm just going to take this T3 that my mom has. I'd be like, no, because what it's going to do is it's going to make your thyroid gland or your thyroid lab values look like you're hyper. And your doctor's going to look at that and go, what are you doing here? Oh my goodness, we need to shut down your thyroid. We don't want that happening. So T2 will increase your basal metabolic rate. It'll increase the amount of fat that you burn at rest. It increases thermogenesis. It increases ATP production at the cell level, which helps with your energy. I have heard some people come back and say that it helps with that cold intolerance where you're cold and everybody else is feeling good and normal. And yeah, I mean, because it is creating that thermogenesis. So T2 is what I put in my thyroid fixer and metabolism fixer products. And it just, it helps so much. It just helps so much. So if you are on T4 only, you need some T2 in your life. If you're on T4 and T3 and you're like, yeah, but I'm still gaining weight, I'm not quite sure what's going on, then add in T2. It can only help because it's going to increase your basal metabolic rate. And the nice thing is it's not stimulating, so it's not going to produce, rapid heart rate or heart palpitations, make you feel like you drank a bunch of coffee. It's non-stimulant, so it's just working on your metabolism to increase that.
Very interesting. Someone is asking about liver. Does she have a Hashimoto's? Does she need liver support? I think it's important for everyone to look after liver, which is one of the main organs for detoxification and breaking down your food and your drugs. I don't know, what are your thoughts? We have to support liver and other detoxification or detox pathways and organs.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The liver is vital. I mean, it has over 500 metabolic processes to it. And oftentimes our livers don't show in our labs necessarily. Now, I'll always look at alkaline phosphatase, ALT, AST, and I really like the alk phos below a 60. I like ALT, AST in the teens. So if I start to see those creeping up, I will absolutely advise the patient, listen, we need to run some liver support here, eliminate alcohol. And what we should be doing, what we all should be doing all the time, is really cleaning up what's around us, cleaning up our life. What do you put on your body? What do you clean with? Do you have a Glade plug-in, for God's sake? So, you want to reduce the toxic bombardment, but then at the same time, there's so much that we can't control that we need to support our livers to be able to detoxify properly.
Yes. Very, very important. Yeah, all those hormone disruptors, if we can help and clear some of that. Yeah. But of course, it's not possible to deal with everything, especially in one night.
We do our best. Yeah. It's that 80-20 rule. So if you are controlling 80% and you are changing about 80%, and over here in that 20% are things that you can't control. You can't control the air you breathe when you walk outside. I mean, you can't control if you're on a road trip, excuse me, you need water. What are you going to do? You're either going to drink city water that has chlorine, or you're going to buy the plastic water bottle that has BPA. I mean, those are things you can't control. So you do what you can and take the pressure off of yourself for the things that you can't.
Exactly, which cause sometimes more stress in some people.
It does.
To clear all these hormone disruptors. So that causes, again, stress, which is not good for health. Yeah. Someone is asking a good question about gut health, which we shouldn't miss, and how frequently do we need to detox or look after our gut, which is a very, again, important organ for detox.
Yeah, for the gut, I say, first of all, start with symptoms. So if you have any kind of acid reflux, bloating, indigestion, anything like that, oh my gosh, it's tied to my gut. You're not eliminating every day. Maybe you're eliminating too much every day. Then, yeah, we absolutely want to look at and start with the gut. But if you're not having any symptoms, that doesn't mean that your gut is perfect, because I don't know anybody's gut who's perfect. So, I love digestive enzymes. They help us break down our food. We can go higher level with really fixing a person's gut health once we know what's going on. So something like a GI map is really good. What I don't like are when people take probiotics and they take the same probiotics every day, year after year. And they're like, well, I take my probiotics. I'm like, great. You've been feeding these 2 billion gut flora for the last 5 years. And the other trillion gut flora that you have been starving, wondering when are they going to get taken care of? Because you take the same damn probiotic all the time. So I really like I like adding probiotics in when we have antibiotics. I like throwing probiotics in, but changing them up. Maybe you do a spore base, maybe you do this one, then you take a break, then you add in foods that are prebiotic and probiotic. I mean, there are so many things that we can do without going through a whole gut program. I mean, a simple, like I said, a simple digestive enzyme helps you break down your food at your meals, and you might find relief with just that alone.
Yes. Yes. To keep that balance with everything, I think in life is important.
Yeah.
Not
Balance, exactly.
or overdiagnose.
Yeah.
So one last question we see a lot over social media, and that could be sometimes overwhelming for everyone, talking about intermittent fasting. So how good is it? How it help us? What should we do? And how to choose which type of intermittent fasting, if any of them.
Okay, so intermittent fasting is fantastic. We know that when we take a break from food, we give our digestion a break. It goes back to the gut healing. I mean, that alone, just even doing intermittent fasting produces healing in your gut. So intermittent fasting, taking a break, our guts get a break, our pancreas gets a break from pumping out insulin, and then our cells do kind of a cleanup. And this is where, when we get into 14 hours of fasting and beyond, we enter into autophagy, which is cell cleanup. It's cleaning up those dead zombie cells that are just running around wreaking havoc, turning other cells into zombies. So we want to do that, but here's the thing. We talked about protein and the importance of protein, and women are notorious for not getting in adequate amounts of protein. Or you think that you are, but then when you write it down, you're like, oh no, I'm not, I'm only getting in like 60 grams of protein a day. So if you throw in intermittent fasting and you kind of go crazy with it, and you're doing 20 hours of fasting, or OMAD, or really even 18 hours of fasting every single day, how are you going to get in your protein? You're not. I mean, there's no way. You're not, unless you're doing these big, like double protein shakes, and then eating a steak every day, and then ending it with another shake. I mean, there's just no way you're going to get it in that short eating window. So I am a huge fan of fasting. I just don't want you to do too much of it. Like, keep it in that 12 to 14 hour range. You're still going to get the benefits. Push it to 16. Go 16-8, because in 8 hours you can get in your protein. But really be mindful of what you are eating in those 8 hours, and make sure that you're getting in adequate amounts of protein. The other thing with fasting and thyroid is that over fasting. So my OMADers out there, the 18-hour fasting people, it can decrease your T3. Now, if you're, let's say, working with someone like us, we're going to make sure that your T3 stays up. But if you're not, or you're on T4 only, and you're struggling with this, the last thing you want to do is shut down your own T3 production. So do not over fast as well, because that's a huge stressor on the body. And we do see, there are enough studies out that show an effect on thyroid lab values.
Great. I promise one last question.
Okay.
This one always pops up again in most of the talks nowadays with weight gain and GLP-1 agonists. So this is very commonly asked. And what's the place of treatment with GLP-1s for diabetes, of course, and now for weight resistance, weight loss resistance. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yes. So I just froze. There we are. Okay, I'm back. So on Friday of this week, I am releasing a podcast on GLPs, where I really spent the time, and I've been diving into the research. Now, I played with it a couple years ago. I experimented on myself. I'm still experimenting now with the microdosing. So I share my stories of the high dosing aspects. I mean, when I say high, I mean what doctors are prescribing. So the standard dosing, and what that did to me, and what I experienced. Yes, the negative effects. Yes, the muscle loss. Yes, the facial fat loss, everything. But the microdosing world, oh, that's a whole new world opening up. So low dosing or microdosing, this is where we are seeing huge impacts still on weight, still on metabolism. No, you're not going to completely lose your appetite and not be able to eat anything that day. but it still is working beneath the surface to really improve insulin and improve blood glucose. It takes down inflammation. It's neuroprotective. So now we're seeing studies that these microdose GLPs actually protect the brain from Alzheimer's. And that's deep in my family. So I love that aspect. There's cardiovascular protection. There's a host of benefits, including even gut health. So the higher dose or the standard dose GLP slows gut motility. The microdose GLPs actually improves IBS. So it's just a whole different world that I'm super excited to dive into. I really think the GLPs are amazing. They're not a crutch. They're not this horrendous medication that everybody's, like so polarized on. I mean, just so polarized as much as freaking politics. But no, I mean, when you take the time and dive into the research, what you find and what I have found that I've summarized for you in a podcast is nothing short of astounding. So I'm a fan of it when done properly.
Yeah, of course, there are foods that can help, but that's it's hard to, someone is asking about foods to boost that GLP-1 hormone, which naturally is produced in our gut. So, of course, we can always do that, but that's probably not that enough. It's hard
Right,
to.
because it's a quick burst.
Yeah.
So the GLP that's in our gut, and some people actually are GLP deficient as well.
Yes.
It's a very fast burst where these peptides have been structured to actually last longer in our body, which isn't a bad thing. Again, it's all in the dosing.
Yes. Listen, I can't say more thanks. It's just great that have you here.
It's been
today.
So much fun. So much fun.
So much. Yeah. Amazing.
Thank you.
And definitely Friday. This Friday is your podcast or a show?
On the GLPs. Yep.
Okay. So sure, definitely I will be there.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Amy.
You're
great to have
quite welcome. Thank you, everybody, with your questions, and thanks for having me on. That's been great.
you all. Have a great day. Bye-bye.